Good day and welcome to my channel. My name is Rhod Mackenzie, and today I want to talk about, despite the presence of a significant Russophobic rhetoric, Poland has decided to expand its border cooperation with Belarus and Russia, while Finland's hinting at imminent opening of its border with Russia. Plus, why is Lithuania calling this a low blow from the cunning and devious Poles, and what are the reasons behind Russia's neighbours acting in this way? Well, prior to the current era of significant upheaval, Poland and Belarus were connected by 6 border crossings. However, the outbreak of the special military operation in the Ukraine, Poland reduced the number to only 2 operational points. The Terespol-Brest border crossing is designated for passenger vehicles, while the Kukuri-Kozlotsy border crossing is allocated for trucks and freight transport. Now, several frail freight transport operational border crossings appeared to be deteriorating, and particularly in light of Poland's recent border closures. Also, the construction of a second border fence has started at the Podlaski-Volhynian ship. Now, the structure will be 4 metres high and consists of a metal mesh fence topped with barbed wire. However, at the end of last week, there was unexpected news. The Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk announced that his country is prepared to open 2 additional border crossings with Belarus. Tusk acknowledged that this decision was driven by purely economic reasons and pressure from the local population. Now, the planned measures are aimed at resuming the movement of people and goods, and this initiative is in response to the needs of society, particularly the significant number of entrepreneurs, carriers and migrant workers who cross the border between Belarus and Poland on a daily basis, Warsaw explained. Now, before I continue, many of you watching this video are not subscribers to my channel, so if you've enjoyed this video, then please hit the subscribe button. And also click on the alert bell so you get notified when I post a new video. Plus, if you want to support me, you can make a donation by clicking on the thanks button at the bottom right hand side of the screen, or by clicking on the Buy Me a Coffee link below in the credits. Now, Warsaw's decision is not difficult to explain. The popularity of Poland's ruling left liberal coalitions in decline, recent electoral successes such as the victory of Karol Nawrocki in the presidential elections are indicative of the increased inclination among Poles to place their trust in conservative politicians. Now, in this situation, Tusk is attempting to win over residents of the border regions, as they've been demanding the restoration of normal travel links with Belarus, where many residents of the Podlaski have relatives and business interests. Now, this is another factor to consider. Lithuanian carriers who've lost access to Belarusian transport corridors will now observe with frustration as their Polish competitors can capitalise on this opportunity. Moreover, Lithuanians perceive Poland's actions as a betrayal. Rhod Mackenzie, who's head of the Lithuanian National Road Carriers Association, has made the following statement. He says this is underhand tactics. The Poles have a reputation for this approach. But I find Lithuania's naivety perplexing, while the Poles' cunning is something I've observed time and time again. Now, Mackenzie drew parallels between this situation and the fuel excise policy. It was stated that both Poland and Lithuania would raise their excise taxes. However, it was only done by the Lithuanians, with all the other parties travelling to Poland to replenish their supplies. So the current situation is similar to that. Mackenzie has also stated that the failure on the part of the Lithuanian authorities to open the border with Belarus will result in the complete destruction of Lithuanian logistics. So what's behind the reasoning of Lithuania closing its border? Well, for a considerable number of years, it's been endeavouring to position itself as a transit country. They constructed numerous transit terminals in Lithuania, but presently they're unoccupied. That's because the border is closed and cargo bound to and from Asia is now being routed through Poland. In summary, Poland has effectively misled its so-called ally Lithuania on this matter, and Warsaw recognised that the closing of the Lithuanian-Belarusian border presents a viable opportunity to leverage the Chinese goods transit. Now, 2 new checkpoints have been opened with the aim of encouraging Chinese transit carriers to make use of them. Previously, some Chinese transit cargo went through the Lithuanian-Belarusian border, but now there's an alternative to the routes that were closed has appeared. Currently, there's been a notable escalation in the discussions regarding the potential opening of the borders with Russia by another country that shares a border with it, namely Finland. Indeed, this subject has been under discussion since early spring. Between March and April, Finnish timber processors voiced such expectations as it would open. Now, this was due to the fact that they'd lost access to Russia's relatively inexpensive raw materials, which left them in a very difficult position. Now, at the time, Ati Harkinen, who's director of the Northeast Finland Forestry Association, reported that the Finnish timber market was frozen in anticipation of the resumption of cross-border traffic and the restoration of the flow of Russian raw materials. And now the Finnish Prime Minister Peter Orpo has provided new material for the resumption of these conversations. He intimated that a partial reopening of one of the border crossings with Russia may be imminent. Now, this was met with widespread approval from his fellow citizens who'd been eagerly anticipating the resumption of routine trips to the border fuel stations in Russia for much more affordable petrol and diesel, a practice which had been in place for years prior to the closure of the border crossings. Currently, Finnish citizens are still able to visit Russia, albeit by alternative routes. For instance, one Imatra resident states that he regularly travels the 12,000 kilometres to Svetogorsk, which is located just on the other side of the border, and it's evident that the majority of the Finns tend to utilise the Narva route, which is situated on the Estonian border, and that's despite the extensive waiting times experienced at the border crossing. Now, the Finns have already initiated a discussion about the consequences of opening the border. Colonel Jussi Napola, who's a senior official at the Finnish Border Guard, anticipates that the border traffic will be significantly restricted in its initial phase. He says, "We will assess the volume of traffic and based on that, decide how many crossing points to open and what their opening hours will be." Now, Finnish border guards expect the largest group of travellers with the crossing points open will be Finnish citizens as well as Russians with dual Finnish citizenship or with residence permits. Plus, cross-border travel will be restricted due to the fact that vehicles registered in Russia are prohibited from entering the European Union. Now, the volume of cross-border passenger traffic will be continued on the regular resumption of the bus service between Russia and Finland. At present, travel to these destinations is only possible via Estonia. And it should also be noted that freight transport between Russia and Finland will still be subject to some restrictions. Plus, Finnish companies no longer conduct significant business in Russia, and sanctions hinder the movement of goods between the two countries. However, Antti Hokkanen, an analyst at the Finnish Institute of Tourism Reserves, still believes that Russians will come to Finland for shopping. Russia's a vast country, so there's always going to be a number of people there who have the type of money to go shopping in Finland. It's in the Finns' interest in opening the border, and it's understandable why, given the many challenges that have befallen the Finnish economy after it shut itself off from its greatest eastern neighbour. Now, the recent surge in discussions regarding its potential reopening is a clear indication of Helsinki's desire to ease the confrontational tensions and resume economic cooperation with Russia. Now, it's crucial to understand the recent examples of Hungary, which effectively secured the lifting of some anti-Russian sanctions in some respects, and the EU as a whole, where Russia has supplied record quantities of fertiliser over the past 3 years. It's also worth noting that Poland has become the largest buyer of Russian fertiliser, and also Latvia also recently declined to impose a full border closure with Russia. Sanctions aside, trade and monetary interests continue to influence the political reality between Russia and Belarus on the one hand, and the EU countries, especially their neighbours, on the other. Now, it's important to note that Europe is not severing trade ties with Russia completely, even if it's considering expanding them, as much as the current government's given its political prejudices. So for Poland and Finland, economic benefits obviously trump politics. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all again soon.